Hey, and thank you very much for joining me. I will be taking a look at the Stygius, its aspects and possible ways to utilize them while leaving the brunt of the gameplay work to you. Stygian Blade is the stereotypical take-all-comers weapon. It is also the one you will find yourself using at the very beginning of the game. The blade is a close-range weapon with access to both quicker and slower, harder-hitting attacks. It requires knowledge of the game's advanced mechanics to really shine, like backstabbing and dodging. This means it would technically be difficult to classify the blade as a beginner's weapon. You might enjoy the blade if you would like a weapon that forces you to learn the game well in order to get the most out of it, and has no bad choices as far as builds are concerned. Blade's normal attack is a 3-hit combo which begins with a fast sweeping slice. This move means you will have no trouble interrupting closer opponents, even when they outnumber you. This attack will also place the boon's effect on multiple opponents, and that's also very good. The damage is not on the stellar end for sure. The second hit is a cleaving swipe from above, which is also pretty fast. This one has a bit more damage compared to the first hit, but lacks the large hitbox. The third hit is a thrust attack that applies a non-negligible amount of knockback to your targets, effectively finishing your chain. Each time you end your 3-hit string with the blade, you're also knocking your enemies back, and they're still stunned, so you can catch up to them if you so wish. If this knockback pushes them into each other or into walls, they will receive a sizable amount of damage. The blade's special is its highlight. It's fast, has a very large area of effect, and it's definitely on the more damaging side. It also has a very small amount of knockback, and applies the usually stronger special boon effects. While it's an excellent attack, it does have a bit of a startup before the attack comes up. You can, after starting the special, dash in any direction, and the dash will go through and your attack will land at the end of the dash. This trick adds a lot of mobility to a button you will be using pretty often. All in all, Stygian Blade is blessed with one of the strongest specials in the game. The blade's dash attack doesn't really measure up. While it's almost instant, it deals very little damage and has no area of effect or knockback to speak of. What it does in an excellent fashion is enabling backstabs in a pinch. And since you're now behind your enemy, you can continue attacking for big damage. The blade is a beginner weapon only in the sense that it will be your first weapon, as it's not particularly beginner friendly. Due to its lack of range and requirement of having to learn the game's mechanics for damage, it does end up teaching the game fairly well. Where it shines the brightest is its flexibility. Most of your damage in Hades comes from various boons offered to you by the Olympian gods. The boons usually make or break the run, however, most weapons have some boons that work really well with them, and thus, some that they are anti-synergistic with. Stygian Blade's moveset though works well enough with pretty much every boon available. This makes the blade the most flexible weapon in terms of builds. The Stygius does lean a bit more on its the dullest hammer upgrades compared to some other weapons that have an excellent set of moves from the get-go. You will most likely be on the lookout for Breaching Slash. The extra damage on the armor effects are the highest tier upgrades on pretty much every weapon. For Blade, it's extra crucial. Armored opponents are uninterruptible, so are usually risky to fight against. The faster you can get rid of the opponent's armor, the better. Double Edge buffs your dash attack, increasing its damage by a minor amount, but also makes it hit twice. Turns the blade's lackluster dash attack into something to really look forward to. The default aspect of the blade slaps on an extra 15% movement speed and an extra 15% attack speed. This certainly isn't very exciting. You will easily note that the improvements don't impact the special at all, which is probably the most valid reason for using the blade in the first place. On the outside, your runs won't necessarily be any easier with this aspect. You will need intimate knowledge of the game's mechanics, and will still need your opponent's attack timings to dodge and retaliate safely. Your game still is called Dark Souls, but now your weapon is a tiny bit better. Do note that most other weapons or even other blade aspects don't need you to be that good at the game. If you find yourself unable to proceed through heat levels, you might want to consider switching up a bit. Since Zagreus aspect is very flexible, it is hard to recommend a build for it. You can play pretty much anything. The aspect of Nemesis adds critical hit chance after specials, which places the move firmly into your rotation, if for some reason it wasn't there already. To keep the buff up, you will need to do the special attack once every 3 seconds. At its final level, the damage boost offered by the Nemesis aspect is approximately 60%. Which, as you might notice, is a lot. Especially so since you are able to further build upon this. I would recommend starting with the Artemis keepsake. Since you already have a base amount of critical chance, any boons that offer increased critical chance or damage are excellent for the Nemesis blade. Once your basic attack has Artemis boon, you can go for any one of the gods that offer increased damage overall. Artemis herself offers increased critical chance and increased critical damage, both of which I would consider top tier for this aspect. Athena has exposed state that increases your backstab damage by a ton. Aphrodite offers increased damage on targets afflicted by weak. Poseidon offers increased damage at the first few seconds, and probably the most vile of these effects, Dionysus offers a whopping 60% increase on targets within Cloud and suffering from hangover. The Nemesis aspect deals a lot more damage than the default blade, but pays in flexibility for it. Artemis is the name of the game here. It's still the blade though, so don't expect to just roll over content. Poseidon drastically changes your playstyle by making your casts take up a higher percentage of your used buttons. Your specials now dislodge bloodstones currently within the enemies, thus allowing you instant access to more casts. With a hefty cast damage bonus to start it off, the Poseidon aspect is one of the strongest aspects currently in the game. The specials dislodging bloodstones from enemies is admittedly a great idea, and the cast damage bonus is absolutely bonkers. What makes sense here is using lodging boons, like the ones offered by Artemis or Zeus to get value from the specials dislodging bloodstones effect. And then piling even more damage by picking the dislodged bloodstones cause damage boon from Artemis. However, in practice, the 50% damage boost is good enough to work with any cast skill currently in the game, because you don't exactly lose much for getting the 50% increased cast damage. So, Dionysus, Ares and Demeter, especially Demeter, with the coupled boon synergy are very attractive choices. The easiest ways to get increased damage on casts are via the Charon's Wells, Chaos Boons, and keepsakes that boost overall or ranged damage. You also want the highest rarity cast boon you can get, as that directly correlates into increased damage and work towards increasing its level through your run. That means you might have to pick increased boon rarity effects from the Mirror of Night and start with your desired cast boon's keepsake equipped. Overall, Poseidon aspect unlocks a more magic heavy playstyle by both making you able to use the casting mechanic more often and offering a hefty boost to its damage. This is the default blade aspect I would consider for general use. The aspect of Arthur blesses you with increased hit points, a nice area control skill, and heavier attacks with more range. The moveset changes from the versatility of the blade to the slow crawl of an impetuous truck. The first attack is a thrust with high base damage and some range, the second is a swing, and the third one is another slower swing with great damage. Your dash attack is just a normal attack with reduced damage. By pressing the dash and attack buttons together, after the first swing you can sort of dash attack in any direction, adding a lot of mobility to this pondering weapon. The special attack places a zone of protection on the ground, which slows both enemies and their projectiles while granting you damage reduction. The innate slowing effect of the circle works notably well with slowing boons or effects, pretty much immobilizing non-speed boosted enemies. You need the slowing effect to be able to land hits on your opponents without being interrupted, as you will probably find the swings way too slow otherwise. Hermes' boons work excellently to overcome this, as one of them makes you sturdy after dashing, and another makes you swing faster. Boons that grant increased damage to your attacks are greatly favored here, with Aphrodite synergizing notably well. She has the highest percentage of damage boost, and her weak status effect synergizes extremely well with the innate damage reduction Excalibur's special area already has. Critical builds with Artemis also deserve a mention here. Legendary aspects are usually side grades to the normal aspects of a weapon. I'm hesitant to say that this is also the case here. Legendaries usually have impactful Daedalus Hammer upgrades though, and this is definitely the case here. The specific Daedalus upgrade for Excalibur makes it so that the consecrated ground covers more space and slows enemies even more. This makes managing the placement of the consecrated ground much easier, and extra slow is always welcome. This aspect diverges fiercely from the normal playstyle offered by the blade. This is the one to go if you want a full physical damage run or a no boons run with Sisyphus shackles equipped. Due to the extreme tardiness of this aspect's attacks, stacking boons are just straight out of question. Damage on hit type of boons also don't work as well. What you want here are boons that grant the highest possible damage boost with an extra status effect to top it off. This pretty much leaves only Aphrodite, Artemis, Athena, and maybe Poseidon. Aphrodite works really well here in general, making you extra tanky and hit extra hard. Athena's boons also work surprisingly well, as slower attacks also has lingering hurtboxes, deflecting more than you would expect. So there you go, Blade, the most versatile weapon. You've got a jack of all trades aspect, a full-on damage aspect, a casting heavy style, and a defensive heavy hitting hybrid. I still think Blade is the most difficult weapon to use, so why not take a look at the guides for the Mirror of Night or Increasing Heat. Also, a subscribe would really help the channel, and we have a lot of content on its way. Thank you for your time and patience.